Hello and welcome to She the People TV Women's Writers Fest powered by Colors. This is our seventh year putting together this unique festival just for you. After a successful physical edition in Delhi, we are now back with yet another online edition this month. So stay tuned for more conversations where we bring you your favorite writers who will talk about their work, their writing process, and much more. Today we have with us two popular women writers who are here to discuss with us what it is like to have a full-fledged career as a writer, that was a successful one, while being a mom, which is a full-time job in itself. So please welcome our first guest, Preeti Shenoy, who is one of the highest selling authors in India. She was also featured on Forbes' long list of most influential celebrities in the country. She is also an artist who specializes in portraiture and illustrated journaling. And that sounds interesting. I think we need to talk about that too in our conversation. And her most recent book is called A Place Called Home. Our second guest for the day is Vani Mahesh, who is a writer of Hindu mythology, mytho fiction, wit lit, and historical fiction. She began her career as a software engineer and then went on to found India's first online library. She has also worked as a consultant writer for Amar Chitra Katha, and last year she came out with a novel, Meet Me in the Middle. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us today. And those are their books. You can check them out. So, to start the conversation, we know so much about you as authors, but since this is a panel about motherhood and writing and the balancing act that goes in between, it's only fair that we start with conversation by talking about your journey as mothers. Preeti, would you like to start?
Our journey as a mother, like, see, one thing occurred to me, okay? So, the very fact that we need such a panel where we say you have to balance motherhood and career, it's almost as if a woman can't have both, but a man can have whatever he wants. The very fact that there's a need for such a panel is telling. So, that's what I felt. But having said that, we have to accept reality, and the reality in India today is most women, mostly the parenting is done by women. Mostly it's mostly the woman who stays at home and raises kids, considering that only 19% of women in India are in the workforce. That itself speaks volumes. So having said that, my journey as a mother, like, what can I say, my kids are all grown up now, 25 and 21. I wish I could wave a wand and make them small so that I could read to them. I kind of miss them. They don't live at home anymore. For some time they were visiting me. It was great. So I think each stage is a learning process. When they are toddlers, there's one process. When they are young children, that's another thing. And I've enjoyed it immensely every step of the way. And right now I embrace this situation where they are independent and they are leading their own lives. I am leading my own life, and ultimately it comes to that. Ultimately you have to let them go, and no matter how much you are involved as a mom today. And I know for many mothers out there with young children, it seems impossible that your children will actually go and have independent lives. But yeah, that day will come, and I'm in that stage now and enjoying it a lot.
So, Bhavani, what has been your experience like?
I completely agree with Preeti. Each stage is different. And as far as motherhood, I think I had read somewhere that you can either survive it or you can enjoy it. I think I belong to the tribe who enjoyed motherhood. It comes with trials and tribulations. And, especially with the first one, you're not used to being interrupted. You're not used to, your plans being disrupted. But that's what you have to embrace. When my toddlers threw a fit, the first time, the second time, it used to be like, what's going on? But then once they started talking, I would ask them, what is happening here? And in their own tiny little voice, they would have uh, such a fantastic reason for what they're doing, whether they didn't want to eat something or wanted a toy. And then after that, it became a very pleasurable thing, even when they threw a tantrum. And you have to also let go a lot with kids. And as Preeti said, with each stage, you have to grow with them. And they are treasure houses of knowledge themselves. It's not just a one-way process at all. We learn so much from them. They're not just when they are adults, just like Preeti, my kids are also quite grown. They are 22 and 16 now. So I'm also enjoying this phase. It's very independent. I don't have to worry about dropping them somewhere or picking them up. But yeah, you know what, the whole thing is your mindset has to change. You don't have to continuously improve them. You don't have
Yeah.
to make them these perfect models. So just enjoy the process, enjoy them.
I have an 8-year-old, so like all this talk about how it gets better with as they become older is very reassuring for trust me. So I wanted to start talk with this conversation with the first stage of motherhood, early motherhood, which is one of the most difficult phases of motherhood. A lot of working women think that work-life balance in this stage is a myth. Do you feel that is true? Is it even possible for a woman to achieve a balance, especially a young mom? Vani, what are your thoughts?
See, I was thinking about this. Is a very interesting question. You have to redefine what balance is. You know, uh, in order to enjoy your child being with them and also working, you may have to forego having a spick and span house, or turning up immaculately at a party. You're not. So you decide. What you're going to give up, because some things have to go. There is a little being who needs your attention. They need attention, they also give attention. It's a really wonderful phase. You said you have a 8-year-old, and you know what, before you know they are 18.
Yeah.
Preeti will vouch for this. So you have to redefine where your balance is, what gives you the most happiness. So that's my take.
Preeti?
Yeah, I feel it's simply not possible to have a balance. Either you can give, because having kids is a 24 by 7 job by itself. So how are you going to, I mean, if your kid is sick and you've sat up the whole night, and it just takes its toll on you. You are not able to focus on work the next day. And I would say just get the guy also to put in the 50%. It's not your job alone to manage the kids. Get your partner to chip in. It's absolutely a 50-50 job, and there's simply no balance when kids are little. If you're trying to do it all by yourself, it's simply not possible. Get all the help we can. If you live in India, we are fortunate enough to hire people who can help us with various things. Then, of course, that comes with its own challenge of getting reliable help. Are they trustworthy? How can I leave my kid with that this thing? So I had all those apprehensions, and some part of my children's childhood was spent in UK. So I was a total hands-on mother. So I would not work, I would work from 9 to 3, because that was the school timings. So 9 to 3, when they were at school, I would work. And I was fortunate enough to not have a boss. I am my own boss. So I report to myself. So I could take my own off days and things like that. So if you have a business like that, that's great. But otherwise, when they are very young, I would say like it's simply not possible to have a balance, because it's not like, what can I say, a balancing act where you're trying to cycle with too many things. Parenting is not like that at all. Parenting is you being there 24 by 7. Your child is going to be cranky, your child is going to fall ill, your child is going to need so many things. So like Vani said, you have to decide what you want. Like, is that job absolutely essential for you? Is being there with your child essential? And the funny part is, even if you quit your job and stay at home, your children are not going to remember it, because the first 5 years they'll have no memories whatsoever. So that's a call each woman has to take, is what I feel.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Preeti, uh, I want to pose this next question to you only. You have written quite a lot about motherhood in your books. It's a recurring theme. It's a part of a lot of your books. Um, as mother, when you were writing these stories, did you ever wonder what your children would think when they would grow up and read your take on motherhood via your books? Do you ever write or edit from that lens?
Never. So one of my books, my very first one, was creative nonfiction, and I have shared true stories from my life and a lot of stories about my children. And at that time, I would always make sure that I read the stories out to them, and I'll ask them, "Are you okay with me writing this?" Because I had a blog at that time which was popular, and only if my children said yes, they are okay, I would write. And even then, they're all very positive takes. I have never written anything which they would be embarrassed reading years from now. I was conscious of that in my creative non fiction. But when it came to fiction, I feel you can't write if you're going to worry and think about, oh, what will my mother think? What will my child think about me? Or what will my mother think about me? What will my parents think about me? What will my in laws think about me? Anyone. Anyone. If you're going to worry about that, you're simply not able to be. true to the story, because the characters do what the characters do. It is in no way a reflection of you or your morals or whatever, because my books have extramarital affairs, they have sex. I don't worry about my children reading them, because I'm not ashamed of what I write. And if you have that kind of open relationship with your children, and the thing is, if you're a writer, you have to have this, you have to have some kind of a thick skin where you insulate yourself from what the society thinks, what other people think. Otherwise, you will not be able to write. That's what I feel. So, no, I never worried about that. But when I was writing about my children, true facts, I always took their permission. So that's how it was for me.
That's a very good point that you make, Preeti. Vani, would you like to add anything here? Should parents take consent when writing non-fiction about their children? Or,
I
do you
agree
feel
with
that
yeah, not when they're very little. If you're writing then, when they're very little, tough luck. They like it or they don't. But I think by the time they are 5 or 6, 7, you get a feel. Do they want this story to be told, or do they not want this story to be told? So I always take permission from my kids. If I have to write a non-fiction piece which includes them, even when I do an Instagram post with them, I ask them, is this picture okay? Is this caption okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah. And anyway, before 5, they won't even remember anything. And there's
Yeah,
nothing to write about them. They just eat and poop and sleep. So, or they fall sick. So, when there's nothing you can write, it's not like they're doing things, to take permission. And that anyway, no one will be interested in reading what they did when they were
even if
babies.
we write embarrassing stories about them, as I said, tough luck.
No, but what can
yes,
be embarrassing when you're a baby? Like, I don't think there can be anything
For
embarrassing.
children, sometimes it is, right? I mean, when I narrate one of the childhood incidents of
Okay.
my children, they're like, "Oh no, no, don't say that."
Okay.
yeah, it's true. I mean, when you have a written account of it, it becomes even more difficult, complicated
Yeah.
Yeah.
disorder that matter.
Yeah.
Vani, I also wanted to know from you that I read somewhere that you grew up listening to Puranic tales and felt very strongly that there was a need to retell these stories. Did this feeling develop when you embraced your motherhood and you relayed these stories to your kids and felt that what, this is not how I want to narrate these stories?
Um, I think. Oh, what was the second part of the question, Yamini? Sorry.
When you relate these stories that you grew up reading, did this feeling to retell the Puranic tales develop then, or it was it in process for a long time?
See, honestly, I started writing mythology for my children because I felt there is a huge lacuna in that field, and everybody knows some popular stories. Some stories about Krishna, a couple of stories about Ganesha. That's not what our mythology is all about. And I was fortunate to grow up with my grandmother who knew so many oceanic knowledge she had about mythology. And I also used to go to temples with her where these stories were recited. So I thought, what, let me not get moralistic about it or religious about it or spiritual about it. Let me just get the stories out, because if you look at each Purana, even in an abridged form, it will be about 2000 pages. So there are 18 of those. So I thought, I love reading them in their entirety. Let me just start taking the stories out of them, for my kids. And it so happened, I was running the library at that time, Easy Lib, and the editor of Amar Chitrakatha had come there for an event. So I invited her into my cabin to have tea with me, and then she said, "What are all these Puranic, texts doing here?" I said, "Huh, I'm just writing it for my kids." She said, "No, no, write it for us. We will take it to a wider audience." So that's how it started. But yes, what my kids are like at the helm of things. Even when I'm writing, it gives me a flow if I imagine that I'm telling them the story.
Really, this is very common among writers. Like we often think about who our audience is, who our readers are, or if you're writing screenplays, you're thinking about who your audience is. Do you do that too? Is it part of your writing process too, to imagine who is your target reader?
Never. I never. I don't think about my readers at all, because if I'm thinking about my readers, there'll be too many things coming into my head. So when I'm telling the story, I'm just focused on the story. I'm focused on the character. I'm in that world. So I'm doing research on what this is like. For example, in a place called Home, it's set in a beautiful coffee estate. So I was only physically present here. My head was all in the estate. I was living there with Alka, with Subu, with Krish. All those characters are very real to me. And at that time, I don't worry about my readers at all. I don't even worry about my home or anything else. There's a sign on my door which says, do not knock, do not enter. Like, So when I'm writing, it's that way. I totally cut off from everything and I am in the world that I create, because that's such a wonderful world. It's a good place for me to be. And it's a very immersive experience. So I don't think about that at all. It's only when the book is done, and then when I have to do my book promos, I think about, okay, who could this book appeal to? Who will be my typical reader? So that's when I worry about it. And each of my books are different. Like I have written YA, I have written non-fiction, I have written fiction, I have written creative non-fiction. So there is no just one set of audience. It probably varies. My youngest reader was, I think, 8. She came to one of my events, and my oldest reader was 84, and I wanted a picture with her. And she's like, "You want a picture with me?" I said, "Yeah, definitely, I want a picture with you." And I felt great that someone was reading that book, and the book she was reading was Secret Wish List, which is about an extramarital affair. And she said, "It's very nice." She said, "You've written my story, except the extramarital affair that I didn't have." I said, "Okay," and then she smiled, and I smiled, and that was it.
Preeti, you also have a very immense, quite an immense social media presence, but that comes with its own cost for women. Outspoken women also have to deal with a lot of trolling and online abuse. Do you ever worry that this will impact your children being outspoken on social media?
See, my children are not children anymore. They are adults. They are, like I said, 25 and 21. And when I had first come on social media, they were very young. So this was, I'm talking about 18 years back or 15 years back, which at that time was very different from what it is now. But at that time also, I was very protective about my kids. I never shared any of their, baby pictures, because I always felt I have to give them the choice on whether they want their pictures out there or not. That is their choice to make. That is not my decision to make. And nowadays I see so many Instagram children influencers, and I'm quite old fashioned and I'm shocked by it. Like the parents tell them to do so many things, and the kids are just performing, or the parents are sharing, parents are making money via their kids, which is all great, which works well for them, I guess. But I find it very shocking, because you're not giving the child a choice. What choice are you giving the child? The child is dependent on you emotionally, physically, in every which way. So if you decide that you have to sing for the camera, you have to do this, the child has to do it. And I always feel the child has to be given that choice of whether to, take that part of their life public, or whether they don't want to take it public. The choice should be with them. That's something I totally believe in. And when my children were small, I was very protective of them. And even at book events and things like that, my fans would try to go and speak to them. But I had trained them well. I told them to say, go speak to mommy or daddy, So I wouldn't let them. I mean, that's what they've seen. They've grown up with it. So does trolling affect did trolling affect my kids? Not really, because they were well protected. I ensured that nothing about them was online. Everything was private, and you will not find a single baby picture. It's only after they are adults, after I ask them, that I've shared. Otherwise, you'll never find, from that period in my life, you'll never find my kids' picture, because, and I do feel you are a separate entity from your kids. Like, your greatest achievement in life is not your kids. So then why share their pictures? And that's what I believed in.
Vani, you also spoke about, asking your kids permission as grown-ups to share their photographs on social media. So do you echo Preeti's sentiments about protecting your children yourselves uh, if you're a public figure?
Oh, absolutely. As Preeti rightly said, what, it's their life. It's not our life.
Yeah.
So I never put out, I mean, I was on Facebook, the first social media, presence that I had. I was quite active, but I don't think I ever posted anything about my kids, or for that matter, even my husband. As Preeti said, I was on Facebook for my library, for my writing, for different things. But now, as we are all older,
Yeah.
I ask them, if there is something funny that we have done, or if there is something interesting that I have done. So I do ask them, what it's, if it is just me, or some building and lake and river, it's not very interesting. So we have these interesting pictures. Can I post? Sometimes they get turned down. Now the older one is fine, maybe because she's at that age. She's 23, and she's like, yeah, sure, what, go ahead. But the younger one is still, she needs to kind of censor things. So it's okay. I completely believe that you have to ask your kids permission.
Yeah,
And, when they're very young, this is a permanent presence. Even if
yeah,
you remove it today, nothing gets removed from the internet. We all know that.
exactly.
So I wouldn't do that. But you know what, as Preeti said, this is the next gen of social media users. Maybe it's working for them, but maybe I'm a bit old fashioned. I wouldn't.
We'll know 10, 20 years from now, Vani, whether it's working or not. Whether
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you.
because now our kids are
Perfect.
grown. We can sit back and say, Acha, dekhenge. We'll see
Yeah,
what happens. At the risk of sounding smug.
I agree.
For
Okay,
a
well,
long time, people thought that I have only one daughter. They didn't know that I have a son because he didn't like me posting pictures, so I would never post. And then it's only recently that he said, "Yeah, yeah, Mama, you can post." And now I post saying, "Oh, you had a son." I said, "Ah, I very much have a son. It doesn't mean that because I don't post on social media, he doesn't exist."
it doesn't exist.
True. That's true. Vani, you said earlier that your the thought to write about mythology and mythological fiction came from the sense of introducing that to your children. We all grew up reading about mythological characters, but what has it been like to write for a younger generation that has grown up overexposed to superhero comics and cartoons, etc.?
See, it need not be either this or that at all. They coexist because mythological stories, when told interestingly, I think there is a need for retelling. Definitely, if you can fictionalize it a little bit, like what Rick Riordan has done for Greek and Roman mythology, even more wonderful. Even otherwise, our originals are fantastic. They have the perfect story arc. They know when to peak, when to come down. But there is a need to retell to this generation. But I don't think it's either your Marvel heroes and heroines or our mythological characters. I think children will equally enjoy the Indian mythology when told in their tone. That's what matters. Even Indian history for that matter. I think there is a huge lacuna in that area as well because we need more historical fiction, more books in that genre. In fact, I have a new book coming out in that genre. I'm not promoting the book here, but what I'm saying is history can be made interesting when you weave facts with fiction.
That's
You
great.
must,
So
you must
we
tell
have
us
talked
about.
about how what
No, Vani said I'm not promoting. I'm like, no, you must promote. You
I
must
must
tell us.
please
promote,
do.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. Please do. Please promote your work. Don't be
Yeah, I
shy
think it's
about
a
that.
wonderful book, in my opinion, because of the dynasty. I have written about the Gupta dynasty. I think I hope it's okay for me to come out and say that it's almost in print now. HarperCollins is bringing out, so more. Please do visit my social media for more details.
Yeah.
So moving
And
on, like we have talked about how motherhood impacts an author's work, but do you think that the opposite is also true? Has there been a time when you're writing something, or you're writing on motherhood, or writing about children, and it has made you contemplate your own parenting and parenting technique? Preeti, you want to go first?
Uh, no, not really, because like I said, my books are completely fiction. So when I'm writing fiction, I don't even remember that I'm a mother or I'm a wife or my role in society. And so no, not really, because see, the books in the mothers in my books can be mothers from anywhere. It's not necessarily from my life. It can be like I read about so many mothers, and there are abusive mothers, and there are kind mothers, and there are strict mothers, and there are so many different kinds of mothers. So has that made me reflect on my own journey as a mother? No, not at all. Because I would like to think that it's completely two separate things. It's almost like asking, has your corporate job made you a better mother? Like it's akin to that. Like I don't think it has, because they are just two different things. Like you can't use a set of principles which you use in one and apply it to your motherhood. You can't run your home like a CEO. So that's what I feel. So I feel no, it hasn't. It really hasn't. My fiction is different. My personal life is different, and uh, yeah, it's what I experience, what I see, what I read about that goes into my fiction. But what goes into my fiction, does it impact me as a mother? No, not at all.
What about you, Vani? You go through so many mythological tales and all. Does it impact you who you are as a mother?
I don't think so either. Maybe some books that I read might, one sentence here or there might have an impact on, how I think about my kids or motherhood. I mean, just to, quote an example, I was reading Leanne Moriarty's Nine Lives, and they all go into a health resort where they have to submit their phones. And the mothers immediately says she's a 21-year-old. You can't really separate her from her phone. It suddenly occurred to me why my 18-year-old then was so protective of her phone. It's a phenomenon worldwide. So I think, maybe when Moriarty wrote it, she thought nothing of that sentence. But that's the power of writing, I feel. And when I read Preeti's books, there's so much compassion, so much love. You know, that way things impact me when I'm reading. But does my writing impact my motherhood? I don't think so. And especially when I write mythology,
Yeah.
there are highly ideal characters, right? But I do wonder sometimes, when I read Gandhiji's biography and he says, my mother read to me the stories from Ramayana, that groomed me. I'm like, oh my God, am I telling them any grooming kind of stories? Because I do tell them a lot of stories, and I feel the take home from a story is to that person, is to his or her own. And on the when coming circling back to the question, I don't think while writing it has, I have had that epiphany. Oh my God, I have to either do this or not do this with my kids. No.
No, I also feel, Vani, that once people are successful, they'll ask them, what happened? What do your parents do? And they have to say something. So they'll say, oh, my mother, read me this, my father read me that. There's no way to go
That
back.
makes me feel better.
Because once you achieve some success, whatever you tell is gospel truth, right? So whoever, like, whatever, I'm not disputing that Gandhiji's mother ever read Gandhiji something, but yeah, but that's how it is. I feel like, and the thing is, what we read our kids does impact shaping their personality. That I definitely believe in, because I used to read to my
But
kids.
the point is, what they take home is their take home. I don't really believe in saying, what the moral of the story is.
Yeah.
I usually, you would tell them a story and say, what do you think you liked? And most of the time, the answers would be preposterous.
Yeah.
The if the author is vying for X, they would go, complete completely in the opposite. It would be the opposite day. But yeah,
No, but I think for very young kids, it's important, Vani. For example, like I used to read my kids Berenstain Bears and Franklin, and it was like so nice because Franklin is messy. Everyone can relate to Franklin, and Franklin is bossy or whatever. So I feel children, like if you read good books, they learn a lot from
some would.
those. That is important, I feel.
I agree. Yeah.
I think a lot of mothers these days, this is a common question that a lot of us get that, what, how do you get your child to read? Your mothers struggle with so much exposure to TV and cartoons and um, games. Do you have any tips that you would like to share, each one of you? How can you initiate your child into reading?
So, who, Vani, you want to
Anyone
answer?
of you
I'll
can
answer.
start.
Yeah, just quickly, I used to get this question a lot even when I ran the library. I would always tell the parents, it's a very organic process. If the parents are readers, somehow the children become readers. They see
Yeah.
you read and we read to them. We want to build the tribe of readers. But I used to tell the parents, even if you're not a reader, start with your child. If, as Preeti said, if your child is starting with Franklin, you start with Franklin and you go up with them. So it's very, very important to handhold, especially in this day and age, because when we were growing up, that was entertainment. Now there are, you have to make it entertainment for them, just like how they would, get to an OTT channel or to their phone. You should somehow make them get to a book, but the process has to start very early. Well, if you have lost a few years, no problem. Just be there with them. You can't just preach. You have to practice what you
Yeah.
preach.
And I also feel limiting screen time will work. Like just make it a rule. No screen time from 6 to 8 or whatever. That's the rule. So you follow it. Like if other people are not following, that's their rule. But in our house, this is the rule. So if there's no screen time, then children look for other things to do. So there's no screens anymore. Then they look for things. Okay, what is there? And then fill your home with books. I feel that's very important. Like give them access to books so they take it and they see at least. And if you don't have access, if you don't get good books, if you don't fill your home, if they don't see you reading, then these are cues that they are absorbing. So don't, so I feel as parents we can set examples by reading ourselves, by making books, like picking up books and being very involved in the book, the child will see you and the child will want to imitate you. And give the child access to a library, give a child access to a lot of good books. That's really important. And books which speak to them, not the books which you think are great. So it's not what I think is great which I should give. It's what the child will like, and the children will always have a way of showing you what they like. They'll be drawn to some books, so allow them to read those books is what I feel.
And access to a library, I feel, more than a bookstore, a library is of primordial importance, because
Yeah,
children are exposed to a wide range of books. They can sit, they
exactly.
can browse. So make it a point, just to take them to a library and be with books. And as Preeti said, let them choose their books. Some kids are interested in superheroes, some children are interested in friendship. So you never know, it is like a revelation to you too as a parent, to
Yeah.
see what they're interested in.
I think that's a very important point, to let kids choose what they want to read. A lot of the times we don't let them do that. Preeti,
Also,
you mentioned in the
incentivize
earlier
them to read.
conversation.
You can have like a star chart. Like if you complete 50 pages in a week or whatever target you put, give them a star and see how many stars they can earn, and allow them to give you a star. It's a physical reminder, like, okay, I finished 50 pages, empower the kid. So the kid gives you a star. So then reading becomes like a challenge, like a fun activity. Do these things too, because today you're competing with phones, you're competing with the OTT, which have so many things. So make these things interesting. Make it a bonding activity between you and your child. And these things you can encourage them to read more. Make something around reading. Like when my children were very young, we had a Wednesday group of mothers. So this was the concept. A group of mothers would meet, and the rule was that you can't just dump your kids and go. It's not a babysitting thing. And one of the mothers would take the children inside and read to them, and then they would so each Wednesday was hosted by one mother. So there were 12 of us or 13 of us. So your turn will come only once in 13 weeks, so nobody minded. So it was a very nice fun gathering around books, and then they would discuss the book, and then they would do one activity. The mother who hosts it would do one activity where they all did something nice. They would create something from the book or some craft or something like that, and then there would be like a healthy snack. So this was the concept. So you can do so many lovely things like that. You can make it social, you can make it fun, you can make it a challenge, and your children will start reading, trust me.
Absolutely. Stay with me, Preeti. Earlier in this conversation, you mentioned that you have written a non-fiction book earlier, and it included your experiences as a mother. So a lot of women who are aiming to do just that, you know, pen their journey as mothers. What are the things that you think they should keep in mind while writing about their experience as mother?
Only as a mother, then you'll have only one book. You won't have many books. So it depends on whether you want to become a writer or not. So I mean, it's only a mother. Then okay, yeah, you can write about your and certain things you can write. Take your child's permission. That's what I feel. Don't write embarrassing things, and don't give them cute nicknames like boss or whatever. Like, just use their real names. And these are the things I feel. And but yeah, if you want to be a writer, then I feel you have to start expanding and writing about things other than motherhood, because your life can't just be motherhood. I mean, I know the panel topic is motherhood, but if you want to be a writer, you have to write about different things. Write the stories you want to tell. Don't just make it about motherhood. That's what I feel.
Vani, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think what, if motherhood comes into the plot, organically, if your protagonist happens to be a mother, like how in my last book, Anu, in Meet Me in the Middle, she's a young mother. So if it comes in, even then, it's not just autobiographical. Everything that I write in that book about motherhood or about the child is not just me or what my kid did. That's biographical,
Yeah.
autobiographical. But what I would say is, for an author, things come from all sides. When you start writing, you have heard something somewhere from some other mother and some other child you will have seen do something. I think it's like a collective thing. So, and also, as Preeti said, if it is a book only about motherhood, you can write one book, unless you are very creative and you do, one book every 2 years of your child's, journey. But otherwise, yeah, if motherhood creeps into your book, yeah, if your protagonist happens to be a mother, just see what goes in. You can't really overthink these things.
Yeah.
True. So, to wrap up this conversation, I would like to know from each one of you some tips that you would like to share with moms who are trying to balance the task of writing books with their motherhood journey. Preeti, would you like to start?
See, the main thing that I did was when I waited till my children started going to school, and then that time is a very precious time. So then suddenly you become very organized. Everything gets done before 9, or things get pushed to after 3, because 9 to 3 was my sacred time to write. And that time you have to guard. You really have to guard your time if you are a mother and trying to write a book. And no compromises. Like, guard your time jealously and use that time to write, because that alone time is needed, that research is needed, that time when you forget all the other problems are needed. So guard that time and give yourself plenty of time, and don't be too hard on yourself. Like, there's always time. Like, so at the same time, like, give yourself time, set goals, but if you don't achieve it, that's okay. Like, that's what I would say.
Vani, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, there are two ways to approach writing when you are a young mother. If your child is very little and if you still really want to write, one, set aside some time, 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, get help. You really have to be very protective of the time. If that's what you want to do. Otherwise, when the children are young, just go with the flow.
Yeah.
When you think of something, you write. I think that's what I did when my kids were very little. I was also running the library. Though I wanted to write, it would just be here and there. Nothing was too coherent. But once they start going to school, and once they're even older, there are summer holidays. Even when they go to school, there are summer holidays, and even then, I would probably set aside some 2 hours, which everybody respected.
Yeah.
My husband would take care of the kids, or I had help. As Preeti said, I have never shied away from getting as much help as I can, because there is no point in doing it all.
Yeah.
This portrayal of the super mother
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
I'm not one for it at all. We are all humans at the end of the day. So take help. So there are two ways to do it. You have to decide whether you want to take it as a profession or whether you are just doing it as a hobby. So whatever suits you, guard your time or go with the flow. And as Preeti said, don't beat yourself up on it, because when not just with young children, when you have children, when you have family,
Yeah.
plans will be disrupted. You may have a wonderful day planned out ahead of you, but you are not just alone.
Yeah.
It's not a solitary activity when you live in a society. So especially when you have young kids, just let go, enjoy the moment.
Also, if you're a very young mother, please sleep. Catch up on your sleep. You can write a book later. You'll be so sleep deprived, you won't be able to think. If you sit down to write, you'll probably fall asleep. So just catch up on your sleep. There's plenty of time. Soon your kids
Yes.
will be at school, and soon you'll have a lot of time. So have hope. And please sleep, like, so important.
Yep.
So, catch up on your sleep and be prepared for your plans to be disrupted. I think those are the two major takeaways. Uh, Thank you so much, Vani and Preeti. Viewers, please stay tuned into this space for more such interesting discussions. We'll see you again soon. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye.
Preeti.
Lovely speaking to you. Bye.
Lovely.